This aquarium stand is 3 feet wide, 8 feet long, and stands 40 inches tall. It's a monster-sized aquarium stand using a method I've never done before with one thing in mind that I always advise against. Now, I've shown you guys how to build aquarium stands over and over and over again. Most popular is the 2x4 stands meant to hold anything upwards of 4 feet long. So if using 2x4s, your tank shouldn't exceed 4 feet long. If we do, we then have to consider a center brace to hold up the middle. Like for example, if we went to 6 feet long using 2x4s, gotta use the center brace in the middle. The downside to that is it takes away from access to the sump and or getting other tanks underneath it, you name it. And if you wanted to go with a 6 foot long stand, you've got to go with a beefier material like a 2x6. This is a 6 foot long tank sitting on a 2x6 with absolutely zero deflection and or bending of the wood itself. If I wanted to go longer than 6 feet, for example, 8 feet long, like my absolutely filthy 375 gallon tank, and still use 2x4s, for example, I wouldn't be able to. I'd have to upgrade to the 2x6, plus have the center brace. But what if I wanted to do an 8 foot long stand and have nothing obstructing where I want to put my filter? Well, that's where I came up with this idea. Now, ignore how ugly it is right now. These concrete blocks are multiple colors because I had over 100 of them in my yard. I'm going to be wrapping them in false wood and or fake rock or something along those lines to make it look really nice and high end. But right now, it's the shell. It's basically the undercarriage. Who cares what this looks like? The most important thing is it can't collapse. A concrete block, I'm going to put some numbers in your head and you're not going to believe it. In order to crush a concrete block, about 100,000 pounds of downward force is required. Now, I've got 4 of them standing here, and these are 16 by 8 by 8 basic concrete blocks, and it wouldn't take 400,000 pounds to crush them. It would just take 100,000 pounds to crush all 4 and or one of them. Meaning, with my 4 pillars and this gigantic wide open spot, it would take around 400,000 pounds to crush these. I just technically just need one of them to crush and then the whole thing will tip over or collapse. However, we're not putting 100,000 pounds on it. We're putting around 3,000 pounds on it. To accommodate that 3,000 pounds, this is a 2x10, upgraded from the 2x4 and then the 2x6, followed by, and then the 2x8 to a 2x6 or 2x10. If I were to put on this 8 foot long run, if I put 2,000 pounds in the middle, I could snap the board if it's on edge like this. However, because I'm using 16 inches here, 16 inches there, I only have about a 5 foot span, plus I'm going to evenly distribute the weight of the aquarium that's going on top of it, but still technically, I could put 4,000 pounds right here. Meaning that between these two 2x10s, I could put around 8,000 pounds on here. The tank only weighs 3,000. Now incorporate all of the ribbing and middle supports and the plywood that's holding it all together. We're probably looking at a force of it being able to support around 12,000 pounds. We don't got to worry about the concrete blocks. We know this is going to hold. Downside is that 2x10s aren't cheap. Contrary to wooden stands, for example, they're uprights. If we were using a 2x4, each single 2x4 that's going up and supporting the platform is going to support around 600 pounds each. A 2x6 will support around 800 pounds each, a 2x8 around 1,000 pounds, a 2x10 approximately 1,200 pounds each. Now, for example, this has 10 2x6s in upright support, meaning that it can technically support around 8,000 pounds. These calculations are important, so again, your tanks don't collapse. And try to find a safety factor of around 2.5. That's to the high end of things, meaning whatever weight you need it to hold, make sure it can hold 2.5 times that weight. That is just, of course, the upright supports. In today's video, what the biggest focus is on this span because we typically don't leave this massive gap in between. But in the long run, we'll appreciate it because it's going to match a lot of the other tanks in here. It'll look a lot better, a lot cleaner, and we'll be able to observe the sump and access it far more easier when we need to. The tank itself weighs 3,000 pounds, and technically the tank doesn't actually weigh 3,000 pounds, but it's going to be 3,000 pounds total. This is able to support 4,000 pounds. In construction, you typically need a safety factor of 1.5 to 2.5. We're gonna have a safety factor of 4. So I already know guaranteed this is going to hold. It's still nerve-wracking and it's still intimidating to think about, but that aquarium is made out of acrylic. It's 8 feet long, it's 2 feet tall, or technically 25 inches tall, and 3 feet wide. We base aquarium gallons based off of air displacement, meaning that we go by the outside dimensions, so 96 by 36 by 25, well 24, divided by 231, because there's 231 cubic inches to a gallon, we'd get 375. Does that mean it holds 375 gallons? No, not even your 10 gallon holds 10 gallons of water. Technically, we'd have to account for the 3/4 inch that it's wrapped around and the bottom and the top. And we technically only are holding, as we're looking at it, 310 gallons. A gallon of water weighs 8.3 pounds. So 2,573 pounds. This is important going over these numbers because when you are constructing your stand or building something like this, you need to know how much weight is it going to take to destroy it. Now, like I said, that's 3/4. I should have cleaned the glass so at least we could have looked at a beautiful fish but I have to rip it apart, so I thought I'll clean it while I rip it apart. A sheet of acrylic that is 3/4 inch weighs around 150 pounds, which is equivalent to about 4.59 pounds per square foot. And if I do all the math and figure out how much acrylic I actually used, believe it or not, that 375 gallon weighs 375 pounds. So if we take into an account how much the tank actually weighs versus how much water and how much that's going to weigh, then I know that just filled to the brim with just water, no substrate, no nothing else, we're looking at around 2,948 pounds, but we'll just call it 3,000. This holds 12,000. And even if I went by the bare minimum of what this would be rated for wood or for weight to be placed before it snaps, just here and here, not spread out, we're looking at 8,000. So I know this is going to support that tank filled even with substrate, no matter what I do. And that's why I was able to have it open in the bottom. And although it might look dangerous or although it might look precarious, I've done the calculations and the math. And even though I'm not great at math, I know it's still going to hold the tank. Now, before I show you how I built this, I just want to mention my favorite thing about these types of stands. Yes, they're ugly, but we can paint them. I've shown you how to do that before, or I'm going to wrap them and make it look really good. My number one thing is if I need this to be a little taller, I can. I can make it taller by 8 inches at a time. If I need it to have center braces because my calculations were wrong or something, I could just put some more concrete blocks in the centers here. Most importantly, it's super easy to move. I don't have to worry about getting it in and out of doorways or anything like that, and I can move it all by myself. Plus, you don't need a ton of tools. Technically, you can have everything here cut at the wood store if you had to. The blocks here, you just put them in your car or truck and drive them home. But how did I build this? Obviously, the concrete blocks are 16 by 8 by 8 inches. I took 2 end pieces, I balanced them. I took the main support and I put it on top and lined it up with our hands because the saw has already cut it straight so that we don't have to worry about that. The main board is 96 inches long. The inside board is 33 inches long, even though the tank is 36 inches wide. Why that? Because this is 1.5 inch, even though we call it like a 2x4 or a 2x10, it's technically 1.5 inch, and then we take a 1/2 inch off here, so it's only 9.5 inches this way. We got to be really careful, and then I take some number 8 construction screws, 2.5 inch, and I drill them in. Now, where am I supposed to put these internal braces? Well, while I was outside, I already evenly measured them out by around 9 inches. I like to do anywhere between 9 to 12 inches in between these supports. But I've marked them off with pens, so now I just gotta like kind of bring these in, line them up like that, over and over and over again, and drill them in. And once again, you can kind of line them up however you want, but there's always gonna be a little bit of a bow or a dip, so you might have to put your body weight on top of it just to line it up and get those perfect touching spots. It's usually not the wood, it's usually your floor. Again, just by appearance. The only thing I don't want is it to be like kind of janky this way. I need to line it up, and you can do it with your fingers, but if it goes to the side a little bit, we'll have some of the 2x10, 2x4, 2x6, whatever you're using, poking up, and it's going to create a bubble in the stand as a whole. If you want to save a lot of time, the most annoying thing with building these things is by far the screws. So I'll just look where I marked and start putting the screws in advance. Just a quick jolt. And then everything goes much faster because building aquarium stands is so boring. It's gonna hold though. So this is technically, I would rate it as the hard part, and it's really not. Once you've got your measurements and stuff, and then you just screw the wood together, it's not that big of a deal. And 2x10s are what your house is made out of. Well, the floors, if you have a 2-story house. Now we're just gonna make sure that the screws actually went through all the way and didn't like miss the wood. So now, the difficult part. I never made myself enough room to do this. Yeah, this is only 3 feet and I have 4 feet, so. Put this on and screw it down. I don't know how I'm gonna pick this up. Oh, I don't go to the gym anymore, I forgot. Everything will be so much easier if I go back to the gym. God, please don't let this fall. Ugh. Luckily, I've done this 100 times, so. On top of that, the plywood is going to be necessary for a couple of reasons. One, this isn't a glass aquarium, and on glass aquariums, you typically don't need it supported on the bottom. Reason being is because most glass tanks and their construction have a lip underneath of it where the bottom panel doesn't even touch the stand. So ideally, you just need the 4 corners to be touching. Even if there's a little dip in between here, it doesn't really matter because all of the supports, and there's not going to be any twisting or anything there on the ends. A lot of those tanks with those bottom lips where you can put your finger underneath the tank and there's about a 1/2 inch under there because the bottom glass is elevated and sat on the bottom trim. Those tend to be on tanks under 120 gallons or so. Can be on bigger ones, but for the most part, probably 150 and below is where those bottom lips will be. And if that's the stand you're building, if that's the tank that you're building a stand for, you're not going to need this plywood. I do need it on acrylic because I don't have a bottom trim, and even if I did and it was elevated, acrylic is relatively flimsy. And even though it does have a high tensile strength, meaning it takes a lot to snap it, it's still going to bow. And if I have a 3-foot open space, it's just gonna bow until it snaps in half. In fact, I bet you I wouldn't even be able to fill it completely without it snapping. Maybe if I went with like a 2 or 3 inch bottom panel, I'd be okay. For example, the 2000 has 1.6 inch thick panels. No bowing. That's basically what I would need for this, or just put a piece of plywood. That plywood is drilled all around the perimeter, and it's almost as if it's like a safety net, a thick safety net. Not only is it going to take a tremendous amount of weight to deflect it and bow it, but because the acrylic tank is sitting on it all flat with the weight evenly distributed, it's going to support it even more, plus with those cross braces in place. But that is how I built this stand for very little. I've already had the concrete blocks. They cost me around $3 right around when I built the pond, so around 4 or 5 years ago, probably 5 years ago. The plywood sheet, unfortunately, it's only a good one side pine. I believe it's pine. It was about $60. The 2x10s, I don't want to say. They were around $80 or maybe $100. Even still, I'm about $200, $250 into this total, which isn't bad for a 375 gallon tank, customized to the height that I want, and of course the dimensions. It's ugly right now. I gotta make it pretty. I'm not worried about that. We still have so much to do and get everything in place before we do anything else. You'll notice that there's not a lot of space here. Well, don't worry, there's only gonna be a 2-foot tank there. I'll have 4 feet of space there and 4 feet of space here. This tank's not gonna be there, so that won't come out. This is 4 feet right here. In between, 3 feet. I know that this might look out of place. It's been here before. It was my favorite placement for the 375-gallon aquarium of all time. Absolutely amazing tank to use as a peninsula. What's going to happen though is I got to take this Asian arowana. I'm going to net him and put him right behind you into this spare 180 that's temporarily set up, literally just to hold them. I'm going to fill it up a little bit more, put him in probably just for the day, so I'm not even going to put a filter on it or anything. And that's when I drain this tank down, remove all of these plants, and there's a lot, because I'm not going to be able to move the tank with all of the substrate. I think there's about 300 pounds of substrate, probably about 200 pounds of rocks. We're looking at well over that, probably closer to like 600 pounds total. But ideally, it just kind of got to go to here. I'll probably be able to move it by myself. I mean, I remember one time I put it up on the 2000 by myself. But I don't go to the gym anymore, so I probably can't even pull it over 3 inches. Remove everything from here, and not only cut off all the plumbing, but remove the bulkheads. Take out the background, because it's not going to have one anymore, and pull it over and put it here. From there, of course, we need to decide if we're putting the plants back in. I'm leaning towards no, but I might do a small peninsula and or strip in the middle of that cryptocorin, just because it's so healthy and it looks so good. But not a lot of it, maybe just like 3 feet of it. I don't know, we'll see what happens. I might not do anything. All right, or I might just tile the tank again. I'm not so sure what I want to do there. I also need to build a brand new filter. I'm using one of my 75s to build a filter under it. I don't need a 180-gallon filter for this anymore. I want to use that 180-gallon as an actual fish tank. Technically, it's going to stay relatively there. I'm going to push it over to the wall, build another stand, and 2 more 75s will go on top of it. The downside is, well, not the downside, I think actually, I was going to remove all this stuff, but it can stay there because the 75s are going to be that tall, and I'm doing the whole gallery like this now, with rocks and plants and that sort of thing. So I think it will look really interesting. Anyways, next thing I got to do is rip the shrimp tank apart, remove everything over there. I'm also setting up feeder tanks. Not feeder tanks in the way that you might think. These feeder tanks are more so to feed the aquarium gallery supplies, from plants to fish. I'm thinking I want to do some guppies, as well as I think I want to do shell dwellers, just to always have fish on hand that need to feed the gallery. So plants, shrimp, guppies, shell dwellers. That's a really cool idea. A lot of us have quarantine tanks or extra tanks or whatever, but there's never something that, I've never really seen it anywhere, where these tanks are specifically just to grow out fish and plants on a continuous basis for the remainder of your aquariums. That's a genius idea. It probably exists, I don't know, but I'm doing that as well. And if you want to see any of that, or if you want to see me build out the rest of this stuff, and I'm doing all of this, I can't wait for the Asian arowana to go here again and become my favorite fish again. I hate him here. I feel like I've thrown him into a depression. He sits there and he watches me over there all day long. Or when I come over, he'll swim around and whatnot, but going here, he'll be able to see everything, and I'm bringing my desk to go right here. We're going to be sitting together. I don't know if it'll be on this side or that side, because I don't know, I might want to sit in front of the window getting some natural daylight, some fresh air. We'll see though. Anyways, all of this is happening sort of in the order that it is so that we can redo the 700. Because these 2 tanks here and the bottom tank are going to be for new imports for the 700-gallon. New fish that I'm bringing in, plants, that sort of thing, that we'll put over there if we do any plants. And then once the 700's done, then these tanks will free up. And by then, I won't have much time out here left anymore because we got something big going on. Anyways, that's it for today. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I'll upload the shrimp tank was a nightmare. It's the hardest fish in the world to move all of them, and I had 1,000 of them, and get 100% survival rate. I'll show you how I did it. It's pretty brutal, but it works. And then I'll show you that system that I built out for plants and shelter, blah, blah, blah. We'll do that in the next video. Hope you enjoyed this one, though. If you did, subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you probably tomorrow or the next day. Hope you enjoyed it, though. See you later.